I'm Peter Block here at EPICSEC 2019. On my left is Skip Anderson, an old friend. Skip is from Houston, and Skip has just chatted with me a little bit about cardiogenic shock. Skip, cardiogenic shock has always been tough, number one, always been difficult to treat, number two, and now we find out that maybe all the stuff we thought was good for it may not be working out so well. So let's start with cardiogenic shock in general. Where do we stand with it in terms of how we do?
Yes. So the really modern era of understanding cardiogenic shock only begins about 15 or 16 years ago with the publication of the 2004 guidelines, which really began to set the stage and promote primary PCI for acute myocardial infarction. At that point, people began in a big way to come into cath labs for treatment, so they were available to be counted in registries and enumerated and data collected. And so the first registry data really reporting in a large way on this only began to emerge about 5 or 6 years ago. And what we learned from that data really is that we're probably not doing as well as we thought we were. For example, the use of mechanical circulatory support for cardiogenic shock is actually the minority of the situation to support it. Data collected from 2005 out through 2015 shows that no mechanical support's used in cardiogenic shock in well over 50% of the cases.
Yeah, but let me just interrupt for a minute. But didn't the use actually initially seem to make things better, and now we have a reverse?
Yes. Well, during a few of those years, the use of mechanical circulatory support was increasing, but after the publication of some small trials, including the SHOCK 2 trial, the use of support devices began to decline. And then subsequently, other data showed that in fact mortality rates during all those years were increasing. So it's very interesting. It's going to require more research, but it's interesting to note that support, mechanical support for circulatory support for cardiogenic shock was declining, and mortality rates were actually increasing a bit during those years. So that's an interesting conundrum.
Yeah, well, that's not good news either, right?
No.
So tell me what the answer, I mean, let's make this nice and short and sweet. Tell me what the answer is to cardiogenic shock. Here we are in 2019 at EPIC, and you're about to say, this is what we should do. So what should we do, or how do we deal with the fact that support is not being used as much as it should?
Yes. So some work groups have been looking at this for the last few years and have actually begun to publish some suggested guidelines and consensus statements, particularly in JACC, cardiovascular interventions, promoting the use of standardized care pathways, standardized protocols for dealing with patients with cardiogenic shock. And so I think that this is beginning to bring some clarity to the field and outline some specific measures to be employed. And hopefully, as time goes by, there'll be greater dissemination of these care protocols, and we'll begin to the process of instituting support, instituting it earlier, doing things like more rapid revascularization support, and hopefully doing this in a more standardized, organized, orderly way. We'll see mortality rates begin to decline, hopefully.
Although we can't be sure of that, can we? I
No,
mean,
we
we
can't.
really just don't know yet, do we?
No, we do not know yet. We need to keep investigating this, but hopefully the beginning now with care protocols will initiate this process.
Yeah, well, the protocols will allow dissemination of the information to smaller centers, people that don't have as much experience with this, and so forth. Fair enough to say?
Yes, correct. The large national registry studies have shown that there's enormous variation between hospitals and also between different geographic regions of the country. And I dare say even within single institutions, variation between operators in the use of various kinds of support and their approach to dealing with cardiogenic shock patients. So hopefully we can narrow this variability somewhat with these care protocols and get some better answers about how to treat the shock patients.
So there you have it. Cardiogenic shock is still a little bit of an enigma and conundrum, but we need to do better, and hopefully by getting these protocols in place, we'll be able to take care of our patients in a far better way. Thanks, Skip.
Thank you.